Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new episode of our F1 2021 Driver Career Mode here on the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today we head to the Mexico GP here as well. We start today's episode off with some regulation changes on the way for aerodynamics and the chassis departments of these cars. Fortunately, we have so many resource points that we shouldn't have too much of an issue being able to adapt all the parts by the time the season comes to a close. We can't further adapt or develop our car currently, so of course we can put all the resource points into just adapting the parts for this next car in this final season on the way of this F1 career mode, coming off of a 9th place finish at Circuit of the Americas, the first episode ever where we ran with no braking line, and now we're going to carry that over here into today's episode in Mexico, where I had a lot better time actually adapting compared to Coda. Now as you see, Lando Norris now at the top of the board in the point standings over Daniel Ricciardo as well as myself. I think maybe honestly the first time this season we haven't had a McLaren of Ricciardo leading the point standings here. So hopefully we can change that after today's episode here, at least close in on Lando, or better yet, maybe win here in Mexico with the same track that we got our first GP win at a few seasons back with Aston Martin, and what was a crazy GP to say the least, if you guys remember all the way back to that point now, a few seasons back now. As we got practice underway, and once again all about getting into a rhythm with the no braking line, finally trying to adapt to all these tracks. It felt like I was going into a brand new track here in Mexico without that braking line, just looking for my brake markers, but it was easy actually to catch on here compared to Circuit of the Americas now, so I didn't really have too much of an issue adapting, and we found some pretty decent pace pretty quick actually here within the first couple of laps of practice now, as we would end practice here down in 10th place on that soft compound tire, about 0.3 of a second between myself and my teammate of Daniel Ricciardo. So I was pretty happy with that actually, to put those numbers on the board now as we jump through into qualifying. The trend this season for us, unfortunately, well, it's been the same in qualifying. We usually make Q2, Q3 really without any issues whatsoever, and then in Q3 I always just drop the ball. It's just been the way it has been, and now unfortunately here with 4 races left in the season, we can't really afford that because we've been playing catch up on the start of every single GP this season, and I was hopeful we could turn that around here today. And then you look ahead, we got Brazil, we got Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi to round out the season, and we know this championship battle, from the looks of it at least, it's going to go right down to the end. Obviously there's still a lot of time for things to change. It doesn't sound like a lot, 4 GPs, but I mean honestly a lot can change in 4 GPs. We could be completely out of the picture by the time we come out of say Saudi Arabia in a few GPs time now, but we easily advanced obviously into Q3. I had to make 2 attempts in Q2. I dropped the ball a little bit here in my first run, but I would better it on the second run and we would advance, but I actually made a 3rd lap here in Q2, and that would go the same spot. I would go faster, go up a few spots, and drop back down into 9th place. So we at least make it into Q3, but look at this. Daniel Ricciardo got a 5-place grid penalty at the end of Q2, so the best he can do is start P5, and I was like, what in the world happened? He got an illegal blocking penalty here in Q2, so Ricciardo, that could be big for the championship. It really, those 5 spots could set him up in a poor spot on the start and get him involved in some contact and get some wing damage, etc. That sets him way back. You never know. Q3 now, unfortunately, I dropped the ball as usual here. I made 3 attempts again in Q3. I went up to P5, my 3rd lap, even quicker here. I found more and more pace as the laps I was putting down continued, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough here in Q3, unfortunately, and I was about to start P10. I crossed the line, still not enough. We will start P10 here for the Mexican GP, as our teammate of Daniel Ricciardo, on the other hand, qualifies on pole position, but we'll start 5 places below that. Let's head to the grid here in Mexico and hopefully work our way forward.
Welcome along to the most populous city in North America, and home now to the Mexico City Grand Prix. It's a sellout crowd as usual here at one of the shortest circuits on the Formula One calendar. So who, I wonder, will the crowd cheer on today to the top step of the podium? We're a long way above sea level here in Mexico today, which could pose some cooling issues for the cars as they make their way around this 2.6-mile lap. 17 corners with top speeds in excess of 220 miles per hour, and watch out for potential overtaking into turns 1 and 4. Anthony Davidson, a very warm welcome to you as you join me in the commentary box for today's event. Let's have a chat about McLaren. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday and will start from pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Leclerc, Gasly, Valtteri Bottas and Ricciardo. They've taken a grid penalty. Hamilton, Tsunoda, Sainz and the Golden Boy, Ocon, Giovinazzi, George Russell and Vettel, Eilert, Latifi, Christian Lundgaard and Guan Yu Zhou. Mick Schumacher and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. Now, it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track.
Ready to go here in Mexico, and this is a start where I'm not too worried about starting down here in P10. I'm expecting to maybe lose a spot or two on the start with knowing how bad they are for me, but going down into turn 1, there's such a long run down into turn 1, all the AI getting together. I wouldn't be surprised if we see multiple drivers make contact and find themselves in the pit lane at the end of this first lap due to some wing damage that they might be picking up here. So this is going to be an interesting first lap. It's really just about keeping our car clean, because we know some other drivers are going to find themselves in trouble. It's going to be lights out and we are underway. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris up there on the front row, Ricciardo down to P6. You see Charles Leclerc with a great qualifying efforts putting the pressure on the back of Norris. Verstappen with a horrendous start there down in this long stretch towards turn 1. When you have a bad start here in Mexico, it just drags on and on, going down into turn 1, the 3 wide with Ricciardo, as well I believe Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton there in the mix. Now Hamilton in his final Mexican GP, there was contact right there. It looked like the AlphaTauri got some wing damage there, so there's our first moment of contact that we have seen at least now, but I guarantee some other drivers probably made some contact there in turn 1. You see some stacking up in the background. I was right here in the mix of this, and I could tell that there was a car immediately that had picked up some wing damage, and you can see right there the AlphaTauri has just zero pace whatsoever, and I'm able to now get moving forward and try and weasel my way around some of these cars to gain as many spots as I can here at the conclusion of this first and opening lap. A little aggressive right there going around the outside, and we get clear of the AlphaTauri who's got that wing damage, so we would make our way through, and you can see they are struggling so hard. Tsunoda is now. And up ahead, though, there was actually more issues because Valtteri Bottas had picked up some wing damage on this opening lap as well, so he was off the pace. Ricciardo actually goes around him, and then I was running him down, so at least 2 drivers, but maybe 3, because Pierre Gasly just in front is coming into the pit lane at the end of lap 1 as well, and he's going to have to replace their front wing and his teammate Tsunoda as well. Valtteri Bottas in, so what, 3 drivers at least coming in at the end of this first lap to repair their front wings as we would continue on. Now, unfortunately, with all the drivers being held up, look at the gap between myself and Ricciardo and Lando Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc. They're already long ways down the road here, so we got some work to do to make up that ground, but I would never rule out a safety car either as well here in the Mexico GP, so that's certainly something that could come into effect at some point, bring us back into it. But now Ricciardo sets the fastest lap at the conclusion of lap 2. DRS enabled, yellow flags ahead, and it's going to be Max Verstappen who's had an engine failure there. He's going to pull to the left side of the track. Smoke pours out of the back of that car, and Verstappen on just lap 3 of this race is going to be out, and that might be the end for sure of his chances at a championship run for the second time in his Formula 1 career, as now that should make it just a 3-horse race, I think, between myself, Lando Norris, as well as Daniel Ricciardo. Caution flags in Sector 2. Actually, no, there's a huge accident here in Sector 2 with that Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin safety car immediately, and a bunch of retirements. What has happened there? There you see it. Sebastian Vettel loses it on the curbing and takes a violent impact. Multiple drivers involved. There you see the Haas of Schumacher, as well as the Alfa Romeos. I believe both Eilert and Guan Yu Zhou might have gotten a part of that, and yes, they did. They're both out of the race. So Williams, Porsches are out of, I think that one was Nicholas Latifi, and that was a huge accident here, the biggest one we've seen all season for sure. I would come into the pit lane. Actually, we do a double stack here with McLaren. Ricciardo comes in, and we would get ready to go back green here on lap 8, but there was only 14 cars remaining in the race at this point after that massive crash, and we would get back underway. And Lewis Hamilton, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, they were now the top 3 because they all stayed out instead of pitted, like Lando Norris, Leclerc, Ricciardo, myself, etc. here. And you're gonna see Esteban Ocon's gonna put the pressure to Lewis Hamilton down into turn 1, side by side, wheel to wheel. There might have been a little bit of contact between those two. Can't tell quite yet. There's some contact for sure, and there goes a winglet sliding across the track, and that was Lewis Hamilton's winglet, and that is gonna be big for Hamilton. Hamilton, because now he's at the very front of the grid and he's going to be off the pace, but he's not giving up. He's still wheel to wheel with Esteban here into this next left right-hander, and then of course you got George Russell just in behind. Ocon gets away and he is going to run because Hamilton's going to have zero pace whatsoever, and that's going to close up this whole grid. There you see Ricciardo, there you see myself here just behind Charles Leclerc, but once again an opportunity to potentially gain a bunch of track position here, and they would stack up right here at the exit of the S's. I'm trying to make a move to the left. Leclerc covers it, he covers it to the right. I dive back to the left here. We're 2 by 2 by 2, 3 rows deep here into this final sector because of Lewis Hamilton stacking up everybody. Ricciardo's going through. I know I have a chance to pass Lando Norris, but what is important to note that you might not have heard in the safety car period, Lando Norris, actually Jeff came over the radio, told me Lando Norris had a mechanical issue that they were dealing with Red Bull right now, so Norris was well off the pace. So now it's really just going to be a race between myself and Ricciardo because Verstappen's out of the race, Norris is off the pace, and there you see Ricciardo going wheel to wheel with Russell. Contact opens the door wide open for myself on lap 11 to have a wheel to wheel battle with Ricciardo here into the braking zone. Who's going to give it first? I'm not giving up this position. I want this position. I know how important it is to beat Daniel Ricciardo. We have not had a wheel to wheel fight with Ricciardo where we've come out on top this season at all at the end of a race. Of course, there was Canada where we were ahead in the closing moments, but then we had that mechanical failure unfortunately here. But now we would cycle through to a 1-2 McLaren running order here after everybody that hadn't pitted under the safety car had come in. But Ricciardo, of course, with the DRS, going to make a lunge down into turn 1 up my inside. I said, nope, we're going to hold on, but he actually sails it off in there, does a really good job with turn 1, but we fight as hard as we can here, get a better exit here out of the right-hander. We stay ahead for the time being. Leclerc was joining the party actually as well, but we come through a few moments later, lap 14, Ricciardo again with the DRS, but I decided right here, you know what, we're not even halfway through this GP. It would really be the smartest decision to just not fight with Ricciardo and just let him have it. But if we get an opportunity, of course, to go and pass him without too much issue, I'm definitely going to take the opportunity, and that opportunity would arise again on lap 18. I was right on the back of him. I looked back. Leclerc was nearly a second back, so I decided, you know what, we can probably go for a move here and not cost ourselves too much time here. Wheel to wheel again with Ricciardo there, as we're going to have a nice little scrap, but then we get ahead for that front position. Leclerc right back into the mix, though, unfortunately, there in third place in the Ferrari now, as we have to prove something here today, that at the end of this season, we can put the fight to Ricciardo and win this world championship. And if we can get our third win of the season, our second in the last 3 GPs, that would be just a fantastic way to head into these final 4 GPs, or 3 GPs actually it will be. But Ricciardo, Leclerc, they all pit on the end of lap 22, catch me off guard a little bit, so I have to come in at the end of this lap. But up ahead, yellow flags, it's the fellow Canadian of Lance Stroll, who's had a mechanical failure, actually same spot that Max Verstappen had his mechanical failure as well. So it's going to be just 13 cars remaining in this Mexican GP, but I would come into the pit lane at the conclusion of lap 22 here to, of course, try and combat Ricciardo and Leclerc, but I was pretty confident here that they were probably going to be ahead of me now with the undercut strategy once I come back out on track. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but we'll have a lap fresher tires, and as long as we're in DRS range, I really think we're gonna be okay. So that was really the big thing, making sure that we're still within DRS range. And you can see on the track map, here comes Ricciardo and Leclerc. Right now it's gonna be close with Leclerc. Ricciardo breezes past, but Leclerc and myself, we're actually gonna be wheel to wheel here as we head down into turn 1 now, as we're gonna try and just settle in behind him here, because I knew my tires were cold. It would be really silly to try and send one up the inside there and maybe make a wheel to wheel move, but now it's just waiting for the right opportunity, putting the pressure on Leclerc to try and make that move to get back up in a second, because we can't have a fight with Ricciardo obviously from where we are right now. So we have to try and just focus in and just make sure we get past the Monegasque driver of Charles Leclerc. And the opportunity was taking a little while to open up. We were coming to just 10 laps to go in this GP, and Ricciardo, this is so awesome. Finally though, with 10 laps to go into GP, we are within striking distance of Daniel Ricciardo for the first time. Ricciardo hasn't finished on the podium in second or third this season. Every time he's been on the podium, it's been a race victory. I want to change that today. Wheel to wheel now with Leclerc in the DRS zone. Fastest sector 1 time of anybody so far here in this GP. I go a little bit wide there in the corner, but still, nonetheless, we're going to complete the pass on Leclerc, who really didn't put up too much of a tough fight there. So we move up into second place. Game on now. But unfortunately, after that tussle with Leclerc, we were not within DRS range of Ricciardo. So now I have to, of course, just put this car on the limit and get within DRS range. And it was honestly a tough task. Ricciardo and myself were pretty even on pace here today in Mexico. So I was giving it absolutely everything that I had in my abilities here with learning the no braking line system today in Mexico. And finally, I was starting to get a little bit closer, but then I would lose a little bit of time here and there. And that third and final sector was really where I was losing a lot of time. In sector 1 and 2, I could gain a good chunk of time, but I finally would get into DRS range of Ricciardo on lap 32. Just 5 laps to go in the GP. Well ahead of Leclerc by about 8 to 9 tenths of a second, so I know we'll have an opportunity to legitimately fight Daniel Ricciardo here, whatever it be. 3 laps to go, 2 laps to go, final lap. But here we are in 3 laps to go. DRS on that front straightaway. We get to within 4 tenths of a second of Daniel Ricciardo. We just get closer and closer and closer. It was looking like either 2 laps to go or 1 lap to go was going to be our chance to make the move. Here we are at lap 35, 36 right now. Into the left and right chicane. We get closer to Ricciardo, but just can't get the power down on the exit to be close enough here. But we're in that slipstream. We got the DRS. We got the overtake button on. He leaves the door open. I go for it, and he's going to cover it off pretty well, actually, here down into the corner. And I didn't want to just make a desperate move quite yet here because we still have another lap of racing and another opportunity, and hopefully we'll be closer to him. But unfortunately, 6.5 tenths a second, that gap as we started this final lap. I'm not close enough to make a move on this final lap here into turn 1. We have to make sure we get this turn 1, 2, 3 run really well, so that way we can have the DRS and make a move down into turn 4. Here we go down into turn 1. We're pretty close to the back of Ricciardo. Into turn 2, we get through here so much better, and through 3, we're going to get the power down. He's a little bit sideways, but I make a mistake myself as well, and we might have missed our opportunity, but we get close. We're going to have to make a move here to have any chance at all. We make the lunge down into turn 4, wheel to wheel with Ricciardo. We keep it clean at least here. We're side by side through the double right-handers now. Ricciardo's not giving up, and I'm certainly not giving up either. Leclerc ready to pounce if something goes wrong for us. 2 McLaren drivers who, of course, want to make a statement and take the lead of the championship still. Wheel to wheel through the S's section. Such a sketchy portion of racetrack to be side by side with anybody, and yet let alone fighting for the win. But we get ahead of Ricciardo into the DRS zone. He has DRS. I go defensive line here to the right side of the track. Ricciardo tries to go the long way around. He's ahead, but we stay ahead of him, and we're going to take an ultra defensive line here into the left-hander. We continue to scrap it out. Ricciardo tries to do the little switchback, but it's not going to happen. In the last lap, wheel-to-wheel battle, we're going to hang on over Daniel Ricciardo in the last half of the lap and win the Mexican GP, our 3rd win of the season. I think our 5th win of our Formula 1 career. An unbelievable tussle with Ricciardo there at the end, and we are finally solidifying ourselves as a championship favorite here in the closing rounds of this penultimate season. Let's head to the podium as well. We earn Driver of the Day here in Mexico.
It's victory in Mexico then, and what a victory it is after an incredible Grand Prix. Tell me, Ant, how did they manage to achieve this win?
I think we'll chalk this one up to a deft touch on the brake pedal. That's allowed them to challenge down the inside into the braking zones, and ultimately, if you do that often enough, you end up winning the race. It was great to watch as well though, wasn't it? Forget strategy, forget tyre management. Who doesn't love a good old-fashioned scrap?
As the winners make their way up to the podium, one can only imagine the celebrations that will take place at McLaren tonight. Congratulations to everyone on the team securing the win and proving they're a force to be reckoned with out on the track.
That was certainly a tough fight right there with Daniel Ricciardo. I cannot believe we managed to at least pull it off right there. And Leclerc was ready to pounce on anything right there if anything went wrong the whole GP. But look at the points. After Norris's mechanical issues, he is 1 point behind after being off the pace. Ricciardo and myself again are tied for the championship. We have a now 50-point lead over Red Bull in the constructors, so that looks pretty good. But we still have 3 rounds to go with Brazil, with Saudi Arabia, as well as going into Abu Dhabi. So there's still a lot of time, like I said, for things to change. We could come out of Brazil, a full race out of a championship lead if something goes wrong there. So you never know. It's hard to really tell what's going to happen. But if you guys enjoyed, you know what to do. In the next one, we head to Brazil, where hopefully we can keep up the fight to Ricciardo and hopefully go in there with a really nice pace and go for a win there again in Brazil. We are on a bit of a hot streak right now, and hopefully we can continue it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching, and have yourselves a great day.